My parents ignored my wedding, claiming my career was a hobby and my husband wasn't good enough for them. For a full year, I ceased to exist. Then they saw my $135,000 Porsche, and suddenly they remembered they had a daughter. They thought their apology would buy my forgiveness and my money. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The chair felt cold. It was supposed to be a symbol of warmth, of family, of two people joining a new life together with the blessing of those who raised them. But the two chairs in the front row, decorated with the same ivory ribbons and white roses as all the others, were conspicuously, painfully empty. My mother, Margaret, and my father, Richard, were not there. It was my wedding day. Outside the small, sun-drenched chapel, the autumn leaves were a brilliant tapestry of red and gold. Inside, my heart felt like it was encased in a block of ice. I stood in the small anteroom, my hand clutching the arm of my soon-to-be husband, Liam. He squeezed my fingers gently, his eyes, the color of warm honey, filled with a mixture of love and concern. "They'll come, Alara," he whispered, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe they just hit traffic." I wanted to believe him. I had spent the entire morning staring at my phone, willing it to ring, praying for a text message that said, "We're on our way," or even, "We're sorry, we've been terrible, can you forgive us?" But the screen remained dark. The last message from my mother, sent 2 days prior, was a single, curt sentence. "We stand by our decision." Their decision was that Liam, an architect with a heart of gold and a spirit that calmed my own, was not of our caliber. Their decision was that my career as a senior software engineer, a job I had worked tirelessly to achieve, was just a little computer hobby. Their decision was that my happiness was secondary to their rigid, materialistic expectations. My younger brother, Lucas, the golden child, had called me an hour ago. His voice was strained. "I tried, Alara, I really did. Dad's locked himself in his study and Mom just keeps saying you made your bed. I'm so sorry." He was there, sitting in the third row, looking lost and conflicted without our parents to flank him. His presence was a small comfort, but it was also a stark reminder of the two people who were missing. The wedding planner poked her head into the room, her smile tight and professional. "5 minutes," she chirped, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, and I blinked them back fiercely. I would not cry. I would not let them ruin this day more than they already had. I was marrying the love of my life. Liam had seen me, truly seen me, in a way my own parents never had. He celebrated my successes, comforted me during my failures, and loved me for who I was, not for what he thought I should be. "Let's check one more time," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then went to voicemail. Her recorded voice, cheerful and smooth, was a cruel parody of the mother I wished I had. "Hi, you've reached Margaret. Leave a message." I hung up without a word and dialed my father. Straight to voicemail. He hadn't even given me the courtesy of a single ring. The ice around my heart seemed to crack, a sharp, physical pain that took my breath away. It wasn't just disappointment anymore. It was a profound sense of abandonment, a final, severing cut of a cord that had been fraying for years. They weren't just missing my wedding, they were making a statement. They were erasing me. Liam took the phone from my trembling hand and slipped it into his pocket. He turned to face me, his hands gently cupping my cheeks. "Listen to me, Alara," he said, his gaze locking with mine. "Today is about us. It's about you and me and the life we're going to build together. A life filled with love and respect and joy. We don't need their approval. We never did." His words were a lifeline. I looked into his eyes and saw my future, our future. One that we would build on our own terms, founded on a love that was unconditional. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and nodded. "You're right," I said, and this time my voice was steady. "You're absolutely right. Let's go get married." As we walked towards the chapel doors, the organ music swelling to announce our arrival, I felt a strange sense of resolve settle over me. The pain was still there, a raw, open wound, but beneath it, something else was taking root. A cold, hard certainty. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their love, to measure up to an impossible standard set for their perfect son, Lucas. I had contorted myself into shapes that didn't fit, muted my own passions, and downplayed my achievements, all for a crumb of their affection. And for what? To be left standing alone on the most important day of my life. The doors opened, and the faces of our friends and chosen family turned towards us, their smiles bright and genuine. I saw Liam's parents in the front row, his mother dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, his father beaming with pride. I saw my friends from work, the people who respected my mind and celebrated my code. And I saw Lucas, who gave me a small, sad smile of support. They were my real family. As I walked down the aisle, my eyes were fixed on the 2 empty chairs. They were no longer just vacant seats, they were monuments to a relationship that had died. In that moment, I let go. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. I stopped hoping for a change of heart. I accepted the truth that had been staring me in the face for years. To them, I was invisible. The empty chairs at my wedding hurt more than a lifetime of their indifference. The year that followed my wedding was one of quiet rebuilding. Liam and I settled into our new life together, our small apartment filled with the warmth my childhood home had always lacked. We traveled, we worked hard, and we built a fortress of love and mutual respect around ourselves. He was my rock, the steady hand that held mine as I navigated the gaping wound my parents had left behind. The silence from them was absolute. There was no congratulatory card, no belated wedding gift, not even an angry phone call. It was as if their daughter had simply vanished from the earth. I sent them a professionally framed wedding photo of Liam and me, a final, hopeful olive branch. It was returned a week later, the package unopened, with "Return to Sender" scrawled across the front in my mother's elegant, sharp handwriting. That was the final confirmation. I put the photo away and resolved to stop trying. My relationship with Lucas became strained. He loved me, I knew that, but he was trapped in their orbit, conditioned to seek their approval just as I had been. Our phone calls were infrequent and stilted, always skirting around the massive, unacknowledged chasm in our family. "They're just set in their ways," he'd mumble, an excuse that sounded hollow even to him. About 6 months after the wedding, I received a perfunctory text from my mother. "Your father is having minor surgery on his knee, just so you know." My heart did a painful lurch. For a fleeting moment, the old conditioning kicked in the urge to drop everything, to call, to offer help. Liam saw the look on my face. "What is it?" I showed him the text. He read it, his expression hardening. "Minor surgery," he said quietly. "She's not asking you to come, she's not expressing regret. She's just informing you like she's sending a memo. This is a test, Alara, to see if you'll come running." He was right. It was a power play, a way to gauge if their silent treatment had broken me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my mind racing through a dozen possible replies. Part of me wanted to unleash a torrent of angry, hurt words. Another part wanted to simply ignore it. In the end, I chose a third path, polite, detached, and professional. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope the procedure goes well and he has a swift recovery." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My mother's reply was instantaneous. "Fine." Just one word. It was colder than no reply at all. That night, I cried for the first time in months, not for the parents I had, but for the parents I wished I had. Liam held me, letting me grieve for the relationship that was now truly and irrevocably gone. "You did the right thing," he murmured into my hair. "You protected yourself." It was around this time that the project I was leading at work began to gain serious momentum. It was a complex AI-driven logistics system, my brainchild, and I had poured thousands of hours into it. My work became my sanctuary. Code was logical. It followed rules. It didn't have moods or hidden agendas. My dedication paid off. The system I designed was revolutionary, and my company landed a massive contract because of it. The success was dizzying. I was given a promotion to a director-level position and, with it, a bonus that was life-changing. It was more money than I had ever imagined earning in a single year. Liam and I were stunned. We sat at our kitchen table, staring at the numbers on the screen, laughing with a mixture of shock and sheer joy. For the first time, we had true financial freedom. We paid off our student loans, invested a large portion, and set aside a fund for our future home. And then, with the rest, I decided to do something for myself. Something I had dreamed of since I was a teenager poring over car magazines. It wasn't a practical decision. It was a purely emotional one. A symbol of my own success, earned entirely on my own merit, without a shred of help or encourage. Meant from the people who should have been my biggest cheerleaders. A week later, I drove home in a brand new, gentian blue Porsche 911. The car was a masterpiece of engineering, sleek and powerful. As I pulled into the parking garage of our apartment building, I felt a thrill that was entirely my own. It wasn't about showing off. It was about claiming my victory. Liam met me downstairs, his jaw dropping when he saw the car. He walked around it, touching the hood reverently. "Elora, this is." "Mine," I finished, a wide grin spreading across my face. "I earned it." He pulled me into a hug, lifting me off the ground. "You absolutely did," he said, his voice thick with pride. We went for a drive along the coast, the engine a low, satisfying rumble beneath us. The wind whipped through my hair, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely, utterly free. The weight of my parents' disapproval, a burden I had carried for 31 years, seemed to lift, carried away on the sea breeze. I had built a life they couldn't touch, a success they couldn't diminish. They had made their world small and bitter, but mine was expanding every day. And as I looked at the man beside me, the man who had stood by me through the worst day of my life, I knew I had everything I needed. They had underestimated me. They had dismissed my intellect, my passion, my resilience. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that the daughter they ignored was smarter and stronger than they ever gave her credit for. To understand my parents, Margaret and Richard, you have to understand my brother, Lucas. From the moment he was born, Lucas was the sun around which our family universe revolved. He was charming, athletic, and easygoing. He looked like my father, shared my mother's social grace, and slid through life on a path they had meticulously paved for him. I, on the other hand, was quiet, studious, and introspective. I had my father's analytical mind, but none of his outward confidence. I was a puzzle they never bothered to solve. Growing up, their favoritism wasn't subtle. It was the bedrock of our family dynamic. When Lucas made the varsity soccer team, my father bought him the best cleats and attended every single game, home and away. When I won the state-level mathematics competition, my mother glanced at the trophy and said, "That's nice, dear. Just don't let all those numbers make you socially awkward." Their praise was reserved exclusively for achievements they could understand and brag about to their friends at the country club. Lucas's first real estate sale, a small condo, was celebrated with a lavish dinner party. My first published paper in a peer-reviewed tech journal was met with a blank stare from my father. "So, people read this stuff?" he'd asked, before changing the subject back to the housing market. They saw his career as tangible and impressive. He wore sharp suits, drove a company car, and dealt in property, solid, respectable things. My world of algorithms, neural networks, and data architecture was abstract and, in their eyes, frivolous. "It's a phase," my mother once told her friend on the phone, loud enough for me to hear. "She'll get tired of her little computer hobby and find a real job eventually." I was already a senior developer at a top-tier firm at the time. This dismissal extended to every aspect of my life, especially my choice in a partner. When I introduced them to Liam, an architect with a brilliant mind and a kind soul, they were polite but frosty. Liam came from a middle-class family. His parents were a teacher and a nurse. They were wonderful, warm people, but they didn't have the right pedigree. "An architect," my father had mused after Liam left. "It's a respectable profession, I suppose. But it's not a stable path to wealth unless you're at the very top." He said it with an air of finality, as if he'd just delivered a verdict on Liam's entire future. Lucas, meanwhile, could do no wrong. He dated a string of women my parents deemed unsuitable, ran up credit card debt they quietly paid off, and switched career paths 3 times before landing in real estate, a job my father had arranged for him through a friend. Each misstep was framed as finding himself. My steady, upward career trajectory was seen as evidence of my lack of a vibrant social life. The ultimate display of this dynamic came a few years before the wedding. My parents had invested a significant amount of money in a guaranteed real estate venture on Lucas's advice. It turned out to be a disaster, and they lost nearly everything they'd put in. Lucas was devastated and apologetic, but my parents rushed to comfort him. "It's not your fault, son," my father had said, patting his back. "The market is unpredictable. You were just trying to help us." 2 weeks later, I used a substantial portion of my own savings, money I'd been setting aside for a down payment on a house, to quietly pay off a high-GH interest loan they had taken out to cover their losses. I didn't tell them the source, funneling it through a third party as an anonymous return on a forgotten investment. I couldn't bear their pity, nor did I want their gratitude. I just wanted them to be okay. I suspect they knew it was me, but they never, ever acknowledged it. Admitting I had saved them would have meant admitting my hobby was more lucrative and stable than their son's real job. It would have shattered the narrative they had so carefully constructed. So, when they refused to come to my wedding, it wasn't a sudden act of cruelty. It was the logical conclusion of a lifetime of dismissals. It was the ultimate expression of their belief that my life, my choices, and my happiness were simply not as important as the image they wanted to project. They were polished and presentable antagonists, their malice hidden beneath a veneer of social grace and condescending concern. They didn't shout or rage, they simply erased. They saw the world in terms of assets and appearances. Their son was an asset, I was a liability. It was as simple and as brutal as that. Their world was a carefully curated stage, and every person in it had a role to play. My father, Richard, was the self-made patriarch, though much of his initial success came from family money he never mentioned. My mother, Margaret, was the perfect hostess, her sharp wit a weapon she wielded with surgical precision. Lucas was the charming heir apparent, and I was the strange, academically inclined daughter who refused to follow the script. By choosing Liam and my career, I had walked off their stage. And in their eyes, if you weren't on their stage, you didn't exist. The Porsche changed everything, not for me but for them. For 2 weeks after I bought the car, my new life continued its happy, quiet rhythm. Liam and I were house hunting, my new role at work was challenging and rewarding, and the empty space my parents had occupied in my heart was slowly beginning to heal into a scar. I hadn't spoken to them in over a year. I hadn't seen them since a frigidly polite encounter at a family friend's funeral 8 months prior. Then, one Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a very long time. It was Lucas. "Hey, Alara," he said, his voice unusually upbeat. "Listen, this is totally random, but I was showing a condo in your neighborhood and I saw you have a new car. A blue Porsche." My stomach tightened. I got it a couple of weeks ago." "Wow," he breathed, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. That's a serious car, Alara. I had no idea you were doing that well." There it was, the language of my family. Not congratulations, or "you must be so proud," but an immediate assessment of my financial status. "I'm doing okay," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Okay, that thing costs more than my down payment," he laughed, but it had a nervous edge. "Anyway, I mentioned it to Mom and Dad, and they were so surprised. Mom said she'd love to see it sometime. Maybe we could all get dinner soon." My hand tightened on the phone. After a year of absolute, soul-crushing silence, the sight of a luxury car was all it took to warrant an invitation to dinner. The audacity of it was breathtaking. The old Alara would have been flooded with a pathetic sense of relief. The old Alara would have jumped at the chance, desperate for this glimmer of reconnection, no matter how shallow the reason. But the old Alara had been left at the altar. This new version of me, the one forged in the fires of their indifference, felt a cold, clear resolve settle in her chest. They didn't want to see me. They wanted to see my bank account. And if they wanted a show, I would give them one. "Dinner sounds nice, Lucas," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Why don't you have Mom call me to arrange it?" I put the ball squarely in her court. The call came less than an hour later. "Ilara, darling," my mother's voice cooed, dripping with a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me since I was a child. "Lucas told us your wonderful news. A Porsche. My goodness, your little computer hobby has certainly paid off, hasn't it?" The casual, backhanded insult was so typical I almost had to laugh. "It's a career, Mom. And yes, it's going very well," I replied, a matching sweetness in my own voice. "Well, we are just so thrilled for you. Your father and I were saying it has been far too long. We've missed you terribly." The lie was so blatant, so shameless, it made me dizzy. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down, replacing it with a cool, calculated focus. This was no longer about seeking their love. This was about exposing their hypocrisy. My mind, the analytical engine they had always belittled, began to work. This was a problem, a system with predictable inputs and outputs. Their input was greed. My output would be the truth. This was the turning point. I was no longer a passive victim of their neglect. I was an active strategist. My investigation didn't require a private eye. The evidence was all there, stored in the digital and physical archives of my life. That evening, after the call, I went to the storage closet and pulled out a small, unassuming box. Inside was every birthday card from the last 10 years signed only Mother and Father. There were the emails where I had excitedly shared news of a promotion, only to receive a one-sentence reply about the weather. And at the very bottom, there it was, my wedding invitation, returned in its pristine envelope, the beautiful calligraphy of my name and address mocked by my mother's return to sender scrawl. I took it out and placed it on the coffee table. This was my key piece of leverage, the ultimate symbol of their disregard. I then logged into my old email account, searching for the correspondence from the time of their financial trouble. I found the panicked emails from my father to his brother, which he had accidentally copied me on, detailing the loss from Lucas's investment. And I found the bank confirmation for the wire transfer I had made, the one that had saved them from a far worse fate. I printed it all out. I wasn't just building a case, I was arming myself. The clever trap wasn't some elaborate scheme. It was simple. I would give them exactly what they wanted, the illusion that they had access to me, and by extension, my money. I would let them weave their own web of greed, and when they were comfortably settled in the center, I would simply hold up a mirror. Liam watched me, his expression a mixture of concern and pride. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked gently. "You don't owe them anything. You could just hang up the phone." "I know," I said, looking at the returned invitation on the table. "But this isn't for them anymore. This is for me. I spent my whole life feeling like I was the one who wasn't good enough. It's time they understood that it was the other way around." My plan was set. I would play the part of the dutiful, naive daughter. I would let them in, just a little. I would listen to their sudden interest in my life, endure their false praise, and wait. I would wait for the inevitable moment when their flattery turned into a request, and when it did, I would be ready. They had forgotten who I was, but I was about to remind them. The first confrontation was orchestrated to perfection, though not by me. My parents, never ones for subtlety when they thought they were in a position of power, invited themselves over the following Sunday. "We'll be in your neighborhood visiting the Bradshaws," my mother had announced over the phone, "so we thought we'd just pop by for a few minutes to see you and that fabulous car of yours." It wasn't a request. Liam and I spent the morning in a state of tense preparation, cleaning the apartment as if we were preparing for a royal inspection. He was my silent, supportive partner, understanding that this was a battle I needed to fight on my own terms. They arrived precisely at 2 p.m. My father, Richard, was dressed in golf attire, looking as if he'd just stepped off the 18th hole at the club. My mother, Margaret, wore a cream-colored cashmere twin set and pearls, her casual Sunday uniform. They glided into our apartment, their eyes scanning everything, from the art on the walls to the brand of coffee maker on the counter. It wasn't a visit, it was an appraisal. "Darling, the apartment is lovely," my mother said, her compliment feeling like a judgment. "A bit small, but cozy." "We like it," Liam said, his tone polite but firm, placing a protective hand on the small of my back. My father barely acknowledged him, his gaze fixed out the window towards the parking garage. "So, where is this new car, Ilara? Lucas said it was something special." "It's downstairs, Dad," I replied, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "I can show you after we have some coffee." The small talk was excruciating. They asked about my job, but their questions were superficial, focused only on the most obvious metrics. "So, this director title," my father began, "does that come with stock options? Your cousin Robert is a vice president at his firm, and his options are what really set him up." "I do have stock options, yes," I said calmly, refusing to give him the satisfaction of numbers. My mother, meanwhile, was circling the subject of Liam's career. "Liam, dear, how is the architecture business? I hear it's so dependent on the economy. Are you managing to stay busy?" Her tone was laced with feigned concern that was really a probe into his earning potential. "I'm managing a team on a new downtown skyscraper project," Liam answered smoothly. "It's keeping me very busy, thank you." Her smile tightened for a fraction of a second. A skyscraper was a significant project, a detail that didn't quite fit her narrative of him being an unstable choice. Finally, the moment came. We went down to the garage. When my parents saw the Porsche, their facades of polite interest melted away, replaced by raw, undisguised avarice. My mother ran a hand over the gleaming blue hood, her eyes wide. "Oh, Ilara," she breathed. "It's even more beautiful in person. This must have cost a fortune." "It was a significant purchase," I said, using their own vague, status-oriented language against them. My father circled the car like a shark. "A 911 Carrera," he murmured, reading the emblem. "This is the big leagues, Ilara. I have to admit, I'm impressed. I underestimated your work." The apology was as close as he would ever get, and it was pathetic. He wasn't apologizing for his neglect. He was admitting he had misjudged my earning power. This was my opening. I decided to strategically reveal the first piece of information. I leaned against the car, crossing my arms, and adopted a casual tone. The signing bonus for the AI project I led was quite substantial. It covered the car, with a lot left over. I let the phrase, "a lot left over," hang in the air. Their reactions were immediate and exactly as I'd predicted. My father's eyes lit up. My mother's posture changed, her shoulders straightening as if she were suddenly in the presence of an equal. "An AI project?" my father asked, his interest now laser-focused. "You led it, the whole thing." "From concept to execution," I confirmed. "It's a logistics optimization system. It's projected to save our clients over $1 billion in the next 5 years." The number, $1 billion, landed with the force of a physical blow. They were silent for a moment, processing it. This wasn't a little computer hobby. This was a world of finance and influence they understood and respected. My mother recovered first. She rushed to my side, grabbing my arm in a grip that was surprisingly strong. "Oh, Ilara, why didn't you tell us? We had no idea. We would have been so supportive." The lie was so barefaced, it was almost comical. Her eyes were practically glittering with imagined dollar signs. This is where her desperation made her sloppy. She saw her opening and lunged. "You know," she began, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper, "your brother Lucas is trying to get a new venture off the ground. A luxury real estate firm. But the startup capital is just so difficult to secure. With your kind of success, a small investment from you would be." I didn't let her finish. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I looked from her eager, grasping face to my father's calculating stare. I gave them a small, enigmatic smile. I'm not really looking to make any new investments right now, Mom, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. I'm focusing on my own portfolio. Her face fell. The mask of maternal warmth flickered, and for a second I saw the raw frustration beneath. She had misplayed her hand, moving too quickly. She tried to recover, forcing a brittle laugh. Of course, dear, just a thought. Family helping family, you know. But the damage was done. Her immediate pivot from reconnection to a request for money confirmed everything. Her poorly executed threat was the silence that followed, the cold disappointment that radiated from both of them. They had come here expecting to find a daughter foolishly grateful for their renewed attention, ready to open her wallet. Instead, they found a closed door. The first confrontation was over. I had won, and they knew it. As they made their stilted goodbyes a few minutes later, the air was thick with their thwarted ambitions. They hadn't seen their daughter, they had seen an asset, and it was, for the moment, beyond their reach. My refusal to immediately fund Lucas's new venture did not deter my parents. It only made them change tactics. The direct approach had failed, so they shifted to a campaign of emotional manipulation, and they conscripted my brother to lead the charge. The calls and texts started coming daily. My mother would send me old family photos with captions like, "Remember how close we used to be?" My father would leave voicemails talking about his legacy and the importance of keeping the family strong. It was a full-scale charm offensive, transparently motivated by greed, and it was nauseating. Lucas was their primary tool. He would call me under the guise of catching up, but the conversation would inevitably swerve towards my finances and his parents' newfound pride in me. "Mom and Dad are just so happy for you, Alara," he said during one such call. "They talk about you all the time now. Dad was bragging about your AI project to his golf buddies." "That's nice," I said, my voice flat. "It's a shame he couldn't find the time to come to my wedding." Lucas sighed, the sound heavy with the weight of his divided loyalties. "They know they made a mistake. They're old-fashioned, Alara. They just don't know how to apologize." "Hey know how to ask for money, though," I retorted. "That's not fair. They're worried about me," he said, his voice rising in defense. "This new firm is a huge opportunity, but the barrier to entry is high. They just thought, since you're doing so well, that you'd want to help your brother." He was so thoroughly indoctrinated, so used to being the center of their universe, that he couldn't see how he was being used as a pawn. He genuinely believed their sudden interest in me was somehow tied to their love for him. The stakes escalated when my father arranged a meeting for me with his financial advisor, a man named Mr. Harrison. "He's the best, Alara," my father had said, his voice booming with false sincerity. "With the kind of money you're making, you need a professional to manage it. He can help you set up trusts, investments, for the family." I agreed to the meeting, knowing it was another part of their trap. I sat in Mr. Harrison's mahogany-paneled office and listened as he laid out a series of investment vehicles. And then, as expected, came the pitch. "Your father mentioned your brother's new company. We could structure a family trust where you would be the primary contributor that could provide the seed money. It's an excellent way to support family and create a legacy." I looked him dead in the eye. "Mr. Harrison, did my parents tell you they refused to attend my wedding a year ago? Did they mention that for 12 months they acted as if I didn't exist?" The advisor had the grace to look uncomfortable. He shuffled some papers. "My role is only to advise on financial matters, Ms. Vance." "My financial matters are tied to my personal ones," I said, standing up. "Thank you for your time, but I won't be needing your services." I walked out, leaving him speechless. The audacity of my parents to try and use a professional to legitimize their cash grab was infuriating. It was time to present a piece of irrefutable proof, not to them, but to Lucas. He was the only one who might be saved from their toxic influence. I invited him for coffee, just the two of us. He arrived looking stressed, clearly having been briefed by our parents about my uncooperative attitude. "I don't get it, Alara," he started before the coffee had even arrived. "Why are you being so difficult? They're trying. Are they? I asked quietly. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a screenshot of the text exchange with our mother from the day I had informed her I was engaged. My text, "Mom, I have amazing news. Liam asked me to marry him and I said yes. I'm so happy." Her reply 3 hours later, "That's an interesting decision. I hope you know what you're doing." Lucas stared at the screen. He had never seen it before. "She never even said congratulations," I said softly. "Not once." Next, I played him a voicemail. It was from our father, left a week before the wedding. I had called him, trying one last time to plead with him to come. His returned message was cold and dismissive. "Ilara, your mother and I have made our position clear. This is not up for discussion. Your choices have consequences. Do not call us about this again." Lucas's face paled as he listened. He had heard their excuses, that it was a misunderstanding, that they were just hurt. But the raw, undeniable cruelty in their own words was something he couldn't ignore. I didn't know it was that bad," he stammered. "It was," I said. "Lucas, they don't love me. They love what I can do for them. And right now, they're not trying to help you. They're trying to use my money to fund your business so they can take credit for it. It's always been about them, about their image. We're just props." I could see the spell beginning to break. The carefully constructed reality he lived in was cracking. He was still struggling, his loyalty to them ingrained since birth, but for the first time, a flicker of doubt was in his eyes. He looked at me, really looked at me, and saw not a difficult sister, but a person who had been deeply and systematically wounded by the same people he adored. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm going to have one last dinner with them," I said, my resolve hardening. "And I'm going to tell them the truth. You're welcome to come. You can hear it for yourself." I had built my case. I had shown the key evidence to the one person who mattered. The final confrontation was set. The trap was no longer just about exposing their greed, it was about liberating my brother. The restaurant was my mother's choice, of course. It was an absurdly expensive place with starched white tablecloths, glittering chandeliers, and waiters who moved with silent, ghostly efficiency. It was a stage perfectly set for the kind of performance my parents loved, a public display of family unity and prosperity. They arrived looking triumphant, as if my agreement to this dinner was a sign O. F their victory. My father was expansive, ordering the most expensive bottle of wine on the list without consulting anyone. My mother was radiating a smug maternal glow, patting my hand and calling me darling in a voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. Lucas sat between them, looking pale and nervous. He met my eyes across the table, a silent question in his gaze. I gave him a small, reassuring nod. Liam was beside me, a solid, calming presence. He said little, but his hand rested on my knee under the table, a constant reminder that I was not alone. The first 2 courses were a master class in my parents' particular brand of self-congratulatory revisionist history. "I always knew you had it in you, Ilara," my father boomed, raising his wine glass. "You were always so focused, so brilliant, a bit of a late bloomer, but you got there. To Ilara." My mother joined the toast. "We are just so proud. It warms a mother's heart to see her children succeeding. Both of you," she added, smiling graciously at Lucas. They spoke as if the last year of silence had never happened. The wedding, the returned photo, the unanswered calls, all of it had been wiped from their personal history. In this new narrative, they were the proud, supportive parents of 2 successful children. Finally, after the main course plates were cleared, my father leaned forward, setting down his glass. He cleared his throat, adopting the serious, patriarchal tone he used for important business. The performance was reaching its crescendo. "Ilara," he began, "your mother and I and Lucas have been talking. We're a family, and families invest in each other. Lucas's new firm, it's more than just a business. It's a chance to build a real family legacy, a Vance and Son, so to speak." He conveniently forgot my married name. He needs $200,000 to secure the lease on a prime office space and hire a top-tier team. It's the only thing holding him back from competing with the big players. He paused, letting the number hang in the air. My mother picked up the thread seamlessly. "It's not a gift, of course," she said, smiling sweetly. "Think of it as an investment in your brother's future, in our family's future. With your resources, it's a small amount, really, a drop in the bucket." This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The entire restaurant seemed to fade away, the clinking of silverware and murmur of conversations dissolving into a low hum. It was just the five of us, locked in this final act. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my purse and took out a small, elegant gift box tied with a satin ribbon. I slid it across the table until it stopped in front of my father. "Actually, I did bring an investment to discuss," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "I wanted to give this back to you." A flicker of confusion crossed their faces. My father, assuming it was a check or some symbolic gesture of my agreement, smiled indulgently and untied the ribbon. He lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was our wedding invitation. The one they had sent back, unopened. My father stared at it. The color drained from his face. My mother leaned over to see, and her breath hitched, a tiny, sharp sound in the quiet. "What is this?" my father finally managed to say, his voice a low growl. "That," I said, my voice clear and steady, "is the last gift you gave me. It's a symbol of your support, a reminder of just how much you've always invested in my happiness. You returned it 1.5 years ago. Do you remember?" My mother snatched the invitation from the box. "This is not the time or place, Alara," she hissed, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "I think this is the perfect time and place," I replied, leaning forward. "You want to talk about a $200,000 investment in the family? Let's talk about the real cost of being your daughter. It cost me my confidence for 20 years. It cost me the belief that I was worthy of my own parents' love. And it cost me having my mother and father at my wedding." I turned to Lucas, whose face was a mask of shock and dawning comprehension. "They're not asking me for this money for you, Lucas. They're asking for it for them. So they can brag to their friends that their son has a fancy office, funded by their daughter's hobby." "That is enough." My father's voice cracked like a whip, but it was laced with panic. He was losing control of the narrative. "No, it's not," I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard, but not enough to be called a scene. "For 31 years, you have ignored me, dismissed me, and made me feel invisible. But the moment you saw a car, a symbol of wealth you could understand, you suddenly remembered I existed. You don't want a daughter. You want a bank. Well, I am not your personal ATM." At that moment, something shifted in my brother. He had been silent, frozen, throughout entire exchange. Now, he looked at the wedding invitation in our mother's trembling hand, then at their horrified, guilty faces, and finally at me. He saw the truth, clear and undeniable. He stood up, his chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing a few glances. "She's right," Lucas said, his voice shaking but clear. "You told me it was a misunderstanding. You told me you were just hurt. But this," he pointed at the invitation, "this is just cruel." He looked at my father. "And I don't want the money. I never wanted it like this. I'll build my business on my own." With that, he threw his napkin on the table, turned his back on our stunned parents, and walked out of the restaurant without a second glance. The spell was broken. The public humiliation was complete, not through shouting, but through the quiet, devastating power of the truth. My mother looked as if she had been struck. My father stared at the empty space where Lucas had been, his face a thunderous mask of fury and shock. Liam squeezed my hand under the table. I stood up, my heart feeling lighter than it had in my entire life. "Thank you for dinner," I said to their stunned faces. It was illuminating. We walked away, leaving them there amidst the ruins of their carefully constructed fantasy, with nothing but an old invitation and a very expensive bottle of wine. The aftermath of that dinner was not loud and explosive, but quiet and definitive. My parents, for the first time in their lives, were left with no leverage, no narrative, and no control. Their greatest fear, public humiliation, had been realized not in a screaming match, but in the quiet, dignified departure of both of their children. They had been exposed, and they had no defense. Lucas called me the next day. His voice was raw with emotion. "I am so sorry, Alara," he said, and the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. "I was blind. I spent my whole life seeing what they wanted me to see. Last night, I finally saw them for who they are, and I saw what they did to you. I should have stood up for you years ago." "You stood up for me last night," I replied, a lump forming in my throat. "That's what matters." Our conversation was long and painful, but it was honest. It was the first truly honest conversation we had ever had. We unraveled years of conditioning, of rivalry that had been manufactured by our parents' favoritism. He told me he was moving out of the condo they co-owned with him and was getting a small apartment on his own. He was severing the financial ties that had kept him bound to them. He was choosing himself, and he was choosing me. Our reconciliation wasn't immediate. There was too much to heal. But for the first time, we were on a path toward becoming true siblings. My parents tried to salvage the situation, of course. My mother sent a barrage of guilt-laden texts about how I had destroyed the family and turned my brother against them. My father left a single, furious voicemail, not apologizing, but demanding that I fix the mess I had made. I deleted them all without reply. Liam and I changed our phone numbers the following week. We set up a rule with Lucas. He could pass on genuinely critical information, but we would no longer be subjected to their attempts at manipulation. The door was closed, and this time I had locked it. Their social standing, which they valued above all else, took a hit. Lucas, in his own quiet way, stopped covering for them. When family friends asked why he never saw his parents anymore, he would just say, "You'll have to ask them about how they treated my sister." The whispers started, and the perfect family image my parents had spent a lifetime cultivating began to tarnish. Their downfall wasn't financial ruin or legal trouble. It was something far worse for them: irrelevance. They had lost their audience. A few months later, Liam and I found our dream house. It was a beautiful modern home with huge windows overlooking a lush, green yard. We used the money I had earned, the money that had so captivated my parents, to build a sanctuary for ourselves. Lucas came over the day we got the keys, bringing a bottle of champagne and a toolbox as a housewarming gift. We stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming in, and toasted to new beginnings. One afternoon, not long after we moved in, Liam and I were out for a drive in the Porsche. We were on a winding country road, the top down, the engine humming a perfect, contented tune. My phone buzzed, and it was a picture message from Lucas. It was a screenshot of a new business registration. Miller Real Estate Group. He had named his new firm after our grandmother's maiden name, a woman who had always been kind to both of us. A name that had nothing to do with our father. Underneath, he wrote, "Approved, all on my own. Thank you for showing me how." I smiled, a deep, genuine smile of peace. The Porsche no longer felt like a symbol of defiance. It was just a beautiful car, a piece of engineering I could appreciate for what it was. My victory wasn't the car, or the money, or even the look on my parents' faces in that restaurant. My victory was the quiet in my soul. It was the love of a good man, the rekindled respect of my brother, and the freedom to define my own worth. As we sped down the open road, I realized my parents had, in their own twisted way, given me one final, unintentional gift. By pushing me so far away, they had forced me to build a life so strong and so beautiful that it no longer had any room for them at all. I was finally, completely, and happily free.